Hey folks, AJ the CEO here, and based on a lot of y'all from our roundtable that we had the other day, y'all wanted to know how I used my old SQL skills and built out a database that randomly would generate pull questions for the roundtable so that this is going to make it very easily repeatable. So I'm going to go through this, and fair warning, this is going to be a lot more technical than a lot of stuff that I did. So hopefully I can explain this as best as I possibly can. I'm going to try and do some pauses and stuff like that to follow along, but it might be a steep learning curve a little bit. But once you get it, I think you might be happy with what's going on. So let's go ahead and cut over to the computer. All right, so the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need to download SQL Management Studio. This is a free download, and you can set up your own database on here. I'm not going to go through doing all that. Well, never mind, I will. So we're going to go over here to the latest version is 18.12.1. I wasn't even using that until I started making this video. So you just go ahead, click on this to do the download. Once you install it, you will have something that looks like this. This is your IDE. This is where you actually do all your SQL stuff and all this other fun things like that. So when this gets started, you're going to have to start a server. For the most part, it will start a SQL Express server. You can always make another one if you need to. And we're going to make a database. And I'm going to make one, even though I already have one set up, I'm just going to show you how simple it is. Once you have your SQL server running on your local machine, you can just come up here on databases, right click, make a new database, call it whatever you want, and then hit OK. So I'm just going to say SWM for Signs and Wonders Ministries, click OK. And look, we now have a Signs and Wonders Ministry database that I can do anything, my little playground for our stuff. So I've already made this, but I'm going to go through all of these steps again. So the first thing we're going to do is, now that we have this selected, this database selected, we're going to click up here to New Query. And I like to keep this, click on this Object Explorer so you can see both at the same time. Hit this little pin so it stays here. All right. So first, we need to make a table that's going to store all of our stuff. And these are the commands to do that. Make sure you're in the database that we just made. You can tell because of this drop down here, you could change anything. And just a little SQL tip, if you're not in that database, you can always type use and then the name of the database. And then that's the command. If you hit F5, it executes it and we switch. So like, let's switch over to a different database, personal. If I run this, watch this change. It switches. That's all it does. So I like to just pick the database and do new query. If not, make sure you use, put the database name, or just change the dropdown, whichever one. Control R gets rid of the results window so you can have this full thing open. Now we want to make for how this works, I have two things. I want to take every book in the Bible, put that in a database so that I can randomly pick, because that's one of our rounds, to randomly grab a bunch of books in the Bible, sort them in a different order, and then our teams have to put them in order in a certain amount of time. That's one thing. Then I want to make a large database of nothing but trivia questions, as many as possible, so that I can keep adding questions in the future. So let's start with the first one, that making a SQL table for our database, for our Bible scriptures. So first we're in the right database. I'm going to do create table, and we're going to give it a name, and I'll say Bible books. And that's what it's going to be called. I'm going to do a parentheses and another parentheses. That's an open and close. Now I'm describing everything that's inside the table. So I personally like to have an index so that each one of these items are numbered. Even though the table is going to be numbered, that doesn't always mean the same thing. So this is going to be a number that automatically increments every time we add something new. And that is my reference to get to this table. So I'm going to call this ID. We're going to give it an int, which is an integer. We're going to set it as an identity, which means it's going to increment one by one, starts at one, increments it by one. And we want this to be our primary key, meaning that this is what we're going to reference off this table. All right. That's the first thing. Now we're going to call it books. Well, I'll just call it book. And that's going to be the name of the book in the Bible. And how many spaces? We're going to give it a varchar. That is a variable character. How many characters are going to be in this? Think of Excel. How many characters are going to be in this cell? So I'm just going to give it 50. And I want every book to be in this table to be unique, meaning that I can't put duplicates in. So I would just add the word at the end for this column. For this column, unique. All right. Put a comma after each column until you get to the last one. Then I want to make another one called Testament. So we know which book is in the Testament. That's how we know we can differentiate when we grab a certain amount. So we only need one character in here. So we'll just give it a char, or you could do varchar with one, meaning that only one character is going to be inside of this. And that's it. There's our table. We hit F5. And now we have a table in our database called Bible Books. If I refresh this, hit plus, go to tables, there is our table with the columns that we just made, book and testament. Really simple. All right, now we're going to do another thing, and we're going to now make a table to hold all of our questions. So I'm going to call this table trivia. Oh, got the caps lock on. Trivia questions. All right. I like to use the ID again, so I'm not going to change that. So now number one is going to be the actual question. And I'm going to give this 500 characters because it might be, no, let's do 1,000. Because it might be a very long question. I want these to be unique. I'm also going to copy this and say, give this as an answer. Now, sometimes, well, I'm not going to get into that. There's my answer. And I'm going to give that 1,000 as well. Now, since this is Bible trivia, we want to have people learn. I want to have a scripture reference so that when we have a question, there's an answer, and this is the scripture proving the answer of what we're doing, right? And I could make this more complicated, but I'm not. And I will leave it. I don't need that to be unique because a scripture might be the same reference for multiple questions. So we want and actually answer could be the same as well too. We only want one question. We don't want to repeat questions. And that's it. So since that's the last one, get rid of that comma. There's our table. Let's run that again. And boom. Now, if we look at our tables again, let's refresh it. Now there's our other question. All right. So now I'm going to cheat a little bit and show you just how, I keep saying I'm not going to do it, but I'll show you. Sometimes I'll just look out here for Bible trivia questions. And it's stuff like this. As you can see, here's 300 of them. And we go through here and there's the answer and there's different things like this. So I'm going to just use these to make it real simple. I do this in Excel for when we have large amounts of questions to enter, but just gives you the idea. All right. I'm going to do a star and a slash, and then a slash and a star. That will comment out everything right there, meaning it just ignores that stuff. All right, I want to use this as a reference. So let's copy everything that we just pasted from those questions. So this is a true and false. You know what I should do? Ooh, let's change it up a little bit. I'm going to comment out all of this, and we'll come back to that. And we're going to remove this table we just made, and we're going to make a change. So I'm going to copy the table, and instead I'm going to use the tag drop. So it's going to completely delete that table. Now that table is gone. So if I refresh it, you see it's gone. We're going to make this again, but what I want to do is add another column, and I want to do type. Q type, so question type. So I'm going to give this a number. So I'll just use this as an integer. And by default, yeah, so that's all we're going to do. So in the future, so we can start having different types of questions. So like regular short answer, long answer, true, false, fill in the blank. And you can make any category that you want. So I'm doing this in the future just so I can remember. So that just made me think when I saw this first question. So for us, let's do it like this. Let's make this in the future 1 equals short answer. 2, type 2 type of question is fill in the blank. Type 3 is who said it. Four is true, false. So that way we'll know in the future if we ever wanted to add more, we can give a type and we'll reference that stuff as well too. All right. So now we're going to start inserting these questions into our table. So first, how do we do that? We need to give it a command. So that would be insert into, name the table. That is trivia questions. We will do select. And now we have to fill out every single one of these, not this one, because this is going to be automatically entered for us. So we need to do the question. So if I come here, the question, we're going to do a single quote. Just notice it's text. The Bible is the most popular book ever written by copies sold. So I would take that. That's the entire question. Single quote. That means that this entire section is going to go inside the question box, comma. Now we're addressing what the answer is. The answer is going to be true. I still have my caps off. True, comma. Now we're addressing the scripture. And since there is no scripture for this, we're just going to say null, meaning that we're not going to put nothing in that column. And the type of question is a true and false. What did we say that number was going to be? That number was going to be 4. All right. So there's everything for question number 1 to go into this column. Now let's rinse and repeat the same thing. So this is a short answer. So that's going to be 1 for our type. 1 is the answer. There's no scripture reference for that. And then that is a type number 1. And again, these are short answers, so we should be able to copy the same thing. Now you can see how tedious this can be if you have a lot of questions, but once we get everything set up, this will be something that is easily repeatable. And that's the reason why I did set it up, so that this will be easily repeatable with the intention of us doing this more. So I'm going to skip a couple of these because these are short answers, and hopefully you get the idea of what we got. And yeah, so we'll just end those. So now let's run. Let's take this comment out of here, because we're going to get an error if we try to create the table again. It will say it already exists. So when we run this, we do everything right, 3 rows were added. So let's refresh this. And now let's see what's inside of these questions. Let's move this comment down. And to see what's inside of it, we're just going to do select star, as in I want to see everything that's in or from this table, trivia questions. And that's everything that's inside of our table now. Our reference number, that yes, they look the same, but it's not the same. And then, oh, I've got to remove question out of there. Ah, joy. Let's fix that real quick. If you have an issue, and let me show you how the power of referencing this. We're going to do update trivia questions. We want to fix that. So we want to set question to equal. We're going to copy this and make it right. Let's get rid of this whole thing. We want to set the question to that where the ID, this, equals 3. That means we're only updating this one. That's why I like the reference instead of trying to do this whole thing. We update that and run both lines. And now our question is fixed. Very straightforward. All right. So now, what if, let's get rid of this line because we don't want to update that again. We can delete it. So we run it. There's our question. Now, let's just imagine, well, actually, let's jump over to the table that I already have thousands of questions already. Let's go to that one, Bible trivia. That's what that table is. And that is under a database called personal. All right. So now if we look at this, you see we have tons. We have 1,271 questions in here. All right. So how do I randomly pick a question from here? So what we're going to do is a little command at the end. We're going to do order by new ID, open parentheses, close parentheses. And we're going to just do the top one. Well, let's do the top 4. And again, we have this ID so we can see how random this is. Let's run that. And you see we have different numbers. It just grabbed a new one randomly. If I ran it again, so that's 7157. Let's run it again. Different numbers. Run it again. Different numbers. Run it again. Different numbers. It gives us a different question so that hopefully every time we run this, we can have something different. That's our command to this. So you could easily say that you got 5 rounds, 4 questions each. So that's 20 questions. Let's do 20. And boom, there we go. There are 20 questions that will change every time. But maybe, hey, some of these don't have a scripture reference. Maybe I only want to pick ones that have a scripture. So we would add a clause at the end here where scripture is not null. So now when we run it, every question we have has a scripture reference. We're back to 20, which is all random. So let's look at the top 3, 180, 187, 107, 49. Let's run it again. Those numbers change. Numbers change. So it gives us something different every single time. So all I have to do is just keep adding more questions and I can run this procedure, this line of code, and then, this select statement, and I can get multiple stuff over and over again. All right. Now, let's automate this whole thing. Now, what I want to do is leverage a stored procedure, meaning this is a miniature program that will help run this stuff over and over again. So let's go back to let's make a new query actually. So use SWM. Now we're back on our database. And what I want to do is actually, let's make the other table. So we have to get all of the books of the Bible. So list books of the Bible. So it's easy for me to copy and paste them. And I just need it plain, not with all this extra stuff on here. All right, even though this is, I just want a list of the books of the Bible without all the books of the Bible in order. Maybe I should just did that. Why can't I just have just a list? That's all I want. Whatever, we'll use this. All right, let's copy that. All right, yay. So we got this. We got to make a couple of corrections here. And then corrections here as well too. So that'll be 2 Peter, 1 Peter, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians. First Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. We got some other ones up here. All right, that's 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. I believe that is everything. All right. So now we're going to enter this into our Bible table. So in that same structure, let's add a single quote in front of all of these. And honestly, there's a command to do this. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But this isn't that bad. All right. And the same way we're going to end this. Let's look at that table one more time, which I don't know why I closed it. So we have book and testament. That's all we have to add into this. All right. So let's do, this is the New Testament. Paste. Now, there's other ways I could have done this, but I could have inputted everything and then did an update because we know it's 66 books in the Bible. I could have said anywhere up. Actually, let's do it that way. Forget all of that. Let's do a copy and replace. Let's do that as null. And then we're just going to do the exact same thing for all the rest of this. Because we just did an update statement. Let's leverage that to our advantage as well, too. All right. And now in front of that, we're going to do insert into Bible books select. I know this thing's boring. Yeah, I used to do this for my regular day job. So that was what's really boring. But I think the good thing about it is I know it enough to still use it on the stuff I'm doing. All right. So now that we got all this, let's go ahead and run it. All right. All our books of the Bible are in there now. Let's delete that. Now let's run it. There we go. 66 books. We got it all right. So what we're going to do is we're going to update this. We're going to do 2 updates. Actually, let's do it in one. We're going to update this. We're going to set testament to equal, and we're going to do a case statement because we want this to change. Case when ID is less than 40, then we want to set the testament to O for old, else we're going to set it to new. Now, if we do it right and we run it, wait a minute, where did I left my, oh, I didn't do an end. Look at that. Let's do it again. So there, everything was updated and we have Everything's set to new and old. Yay. All right. That is done. Now, let's take everything that we just did and we're going to now make a stored procedure. So let's write this out the long way first. I'll use the same window. So just like we did, if we did a order by new ID and we do top 4, see, it's going to give us random anything from the table. See, you might get all Old Testament, you might get all New Testament, you might get a mix, 3 New Testaments, 1 Old. So what we want to do is do a clause like we did before with our scripture. We want to say where Testament equals Old. Now we search for the top 4, and I spelled Testament wrong. So now when we do this run pull 4, it's always going to give us nothing but the Old Testament. So it's going to be random. All right. So we're going to do the same thing, but we're also going to do new. So now we're going to do both of them. Now, can I do a union right here? No, we can't. So we run both of these. So that's going to give us 4 random Old Testament, 4 random New Testament every single time. Really cool, right? So what we want to do now is we want to pull this and then sort all of these at the same time so that, hey, every time we do it, when we run it, we're not pulling the same thing every single time. All right. So what we're going to do is let's make a dummy table real quick. And it's going to be kind of a, see, I'm thinking now, this is what the issue I had when I came and did this as a job. I would be writing something and then all of a sudden I'd have an epiphany and I'm like, I'm down this rabbit hole, but then I had something that's going to take me somewhere completely different. I just thought of a different way to do this instead of doing it like this that I thought would make it easier. And I think I am going to do that. All right, let's go ahead and drop in script this this Bible books table again. So all of this is what we wrote. I mean, it added all this extra stuff in it. So what we're going to do is add a new column here, and I'll call it Bible sort. And I'm going to make this a bit character. So that's just a 1 or a 0, all right? And default would be 0. Let's run that. And there we go. So what we're going to do now is this. We're still going to grab the same thing, but we're just going to flip that flag. So that way we can sort everything. So what we're going to do is instead of running the select statement, let's comment these out. This went from me showing you how I'm doing this to me reinventing how I'm doing it. So interesting. What we're going to do now is we're going to do actually, no, we can still do that. We're still going to use these lines, right? Oh, we dropped the table. Oh, no. Can I refresh and get everything back to what I just did? I completely undid my insert. So since we dropped the table and made it again, it's empty. All right, so that's null. And since we added a new column, we need to add double that. So that's null, comma, null. No, 0. That's what we need to do. So let's replace all of these. Now let's run that again. Yay. Now it's working. That's why I should not have deleted everything. All right. So we got that. Let's look at the table now. We have a new column there. There. Let's do that update again. Update Bible books set testament to equal case when ID is less than 40, then set it to O, else set it to new, end. So now when we run it, there we go. We got everything back. All right, so now it's amazing what you can do when you actually have a clear mind and you're not half asleep when you're writing this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. Select top 4 star from Bible books where testament equals O. That gives us this. Let's do it again. And where it's new. So there we go. Now what we want to do, instead of pulling the whole thing, we only want to pull the ID number and the ID number here. So that just gives us numbers. And why did it do it in a perfect order? I don't want to do that. Oh, I didn't. I told you I ain't thinking. And then we order. I forgot this part. New ID. This is what gives us our randomness on each time we look at this. There we go. Now we're doing it random. So we're just getting the numbers, right? We're going to join those together. And that still doesn't work. Oh, well, doesn't matter. I know what I need to do. So now that we got this, we're going to feed these numbers into our update statement. So we're going to do update Bible questions. Oh, no, Bible books. Update Bible books set. And what do we call that extra column? Bible sort. That's what we called it. We want to set Bible sort to equal 1 where the ID is in this list of IDs. And then we'll do it again for the New Testament. And then we want to see select star from Bible books where the bit equals 1, not bit, Bible sort is a bit. So if we run this right now, see, we get nothing. Let's run this update statement. Now let's run it. Those are the books that have been selected. Now we could easily have changed this into 5 books, 6 books, 2 books, whichever one. It just updates that. So every time we're going to do this. All right. So just for some prep work, we want to have this be very repeatable, right? So every time before we run this, we want to set everything to 0. So let's copy these numbers so we can verify how random this stuff is. Those were our original numbers. Right here, we're resetting everything to 0. We're picking 4 books in the Bible from the Old Testament, and then another 4 random again from the New Testament, and then we want to see what comes out. So let's run this again. And you can see that was row number 1, time number 1 that we ran it. I keep hitting the wrong button. And see, now this is different. Like 52 just happened to be pulled again. 41 and 48 got pulled again. But we just got to, that's kind of the luck of the draw. It's random. So our concept is working. All right. So we got all of this. Let's shrink this so I can get this out the way. All right. So we got this. Now, how are we going to make all of this into a step? So we're going to turn this into a stored procedure. So what that is a program. So instead of writing this every single time, we just do one command and it's going to call all this stuff automatically. So we're going to do create procedure SP, and this is normally round 5 for what I'm doing. So I would do pick round 5. That's what I'm gonna call it. So I'm gonna call it that and do as. We're gonna do begin. That's begin of the stored procedure. And then we're gonna do end of the stored procedure. We're gonna take all this code that we just did and just push it over. It just makes you format it so you can read it easily. So the first thing we do around 5, boom, we get that. We're going to update that table, set all of our books back to 0. We're going to pick our books and then spit them out. That's it. All right. So now if we run that, oh, I didn't put this as my first entry. When you do a create store procedure, that has to be the very first thing that you list. There we go. So we're all good to go. So now, how do we engage that? All we have to do now is do execute SP pick round 5. And there we go. Well, if we just run that line, it will give us our scripture every single time for our answers, for our rounds. All right. Now we're going to make one more change to this because we want this to be random. All right. We want to make it easy for us when we start to do this. So let's go back here to modify this. We're going to run this, but then we want to, if we run this line and instead we want to order it alphabetically. So hopefully that would keep it out of order because this is easy for us to tell what the answer is, but we don't want to output it in the order because it's in the order. Somebody already know the answer. So we want to add at the end of here, we want to order by book. So now when we run it, and I hit the wrong output here. So now, as you can see, it's mixing it up, but because it's ordering it by alphabetical order. This is what we would copy into a slide to show to our contestants, and then they have to sort it in order. But behind the scenes, we have the number order, so we'll know which one is right. All right. So we'll make a modification to that. It's already, we're altering our store procedure. All we have to do is execute, and now that update is there. So if we run this again, as you can see, it's been put in order. And it put in order by number. So there you go. We run it again. Run it again. There you go. So it's still going to give us 4 and 4, but then it's going to order it alphabetically, and we go from there. So that round is fine. We're going to take that same concept, and with the revision I just made, we can do the same thing for our Bible trivia questions. But we're going to make this a little bit more difficult to make it easier for us. So let's go back to create procedure, SP for store procedure, pick round questions. That's what I'll call it as, and I need to spell procedure right. Begin, end. Now we're going to do this differently because sometimes maybe you want to have different rounds. Maybe you don't want to have 4. Maybe you want to have 3. So what we're going to do is put a variable on the outside of this, and we're going to call it @rounds and give it an integer, meaning that we're going to send it a number so that way we'll know what's going to be done. All right. So we're going to need some variables in this so we can do some code with this. So we're going to do declare current as an int. That's the current round we're on. We're getting the rounds coming in. So what we're going to do, we're going to base everything off of rounds. And we're also going to do another variable, call it questions as int. All right. So current is just what rotation we're on. And then also questions are how many questions are going in each round. We could make this as a variable on the outside, but right now I'm going to stick with 4 questions. That's me, but you can make that change, and I would show you how to do that. So now that we got this, we need to set each one of these, as in put something in the variable. So we're just going to do set. So current is going to equal 0. Questions, for right now, like I said, I'm using 4. I would do 4. So that means that there's 4 questions every time we do what I'm doing. All right. So now we're going to loop through this. So say we have, let's do it as one round. What we're going to do, just like we just did before, we're going to look at select star from Bible. Now I'm forgetting the name of the table that we gave it. Trivia questions. All right. And we're going to order by new ID. And we want to have a scripture reference, right? Where scripture is not null. And we're only going to pick one question, right? Top 1. Let's make sure I didn't mess up what I was doing here. Oh, we only have one question. And none of them had trivia in here. That would be the reason why. I was looking at my other table. So let's just do that. Here. And I might actually need to reference my other table here that has more questions. Where scripture is not null. And we do a top 1. We run this. See, it's going to give us a question, give us our answer with our scripture. We're only pulling questions with a scripture answer. All right. So we want to do this 4 times. So we could just do 4. That gives us our 4 questions for each round, right? So what we're going to do is grab this. And I really need to add that extra column because I think that revision that we just made this so much easier. So I want to add to that table without everything being destructive. So let's go ahead and design the table. Hopefully this is not going to be very destructive. We're going to do this picked. I'll just do it as that. And let's give it a bit the same way. And for right now, we'll say we allow nulls. All right, so there we go. Please say it maintains it. Yes, it does. Let's run this again. And there's our bit. Yay. So just like we did, we're going to do an update Bible trivia set picked to equal 1 where ID is in. And we're just going to pick the top 4 IDs from the select statement. And that's it. All right. But we, like, again, we want to do this outside of this loop. All right. Because we're going to be picking this. So we don't want to make sure we pick the same question every round. Right. So we're going to add another statement to this. We want to get an ID from our table where scripture is not null and picked picked equals 0. meaning that once we pick this one question, we will not pick the same one. If it is, skip it, pick something else. Because the last thing you want to do is pull a question and then have that question in multiple rounds. All right. So at the very beginning of all of this, and we're not going to do it right now, but we need to reset all of our questions back to 0. All right. So when we do this, hey, for round 1, boom, I got my 4 questions. All right. Now we're going to do that again. And now it's like, what row is it going to be? So we got to work on that. So we have rounds coming in. That's a number. Let's just say that number is, let's just say the number is 5. So we're going to have 5 rounds. So we're going to loop and repeat this whole process 5 times. So how do we do that? We do while. This is a while loop. While we use this one that we just did, current, that variable, which starts at 0, while current is less than rounds. So rounds is 0. I mean, rounds is 5 in this our example. Current is 0. So as long as current is less than 5, it's going to keep looping. All right. Then we do begin. And then end. I keep spelling begin wrong. Now, before we finish this loop, we need to increment current so that current will keep getting bigger and bigger until it equals the same thing as round. And that is the flag to tell this, hey, stop repeating. If you don't do this, this thing will loop forever. Plus 1. So the first time it goes around, current is 1, round is 0. Let's actually put the numbers here. So this will be 0. This will be 5. Yep. 0 is less than 5. Loop. Grab some questions. Grab 4 questions. Let's increase current to 1. Plus 1. So now it's 1. Hey, is it still less than 5? Yep. Pick another 4 questions. Boom. Increment it again. Now it's 2. Is it still less? Yep. Gets another 4 questions. Boom. It moves it up. Now it's 3. Is it still less? Yep. 4 more questions. 4. Get some more questions. 5. Get some more questions because 5, is it less than 5? It's actually equal. So it should end right here. Once this ends, and actually let's do this, greater than or equal to 5, it's going to end. So we had 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds. So we'll have 20 questions coming out of that. All righty. So at the beginning of this, we're going to take this, getting all this extra buttons here on here. We're going to take that, and the first time we run this, we want to clear out any questions that we've used before. All right. Again, this is meant for it to be repeatable. You do one game this month, you come back 2 months later, you run it again, you pick other questions. All right. So now we got some other stuff we need to add to this, but let's just run this and let's see how this works. Let's get rid of all of this stuff. We got our questions. So actually questions we don't need. So we'll come back and erase that. Well, actually, let's erase it now. We don't need questions because we're picking our 4 questions on the fly. All right. Let's create the stored procedure. Boom. There we go. So now let's see if our stuff works. We're going to run this and say we only have 2 rounds. Let's run it. We should have a total of 8 questions, right? Let's go ahead and run it. And I'm in the wrong database. All right, so there we go. And I think our math is off. I messed up. So the less than and equal to probably messed that up. But let's go look at that. So we'll look at select, and I forgot that last statement. Select star from Bible trivia, where bit equals 1. Oh, I keep doing, not bit. What do we call it? Picked. That's what we called it. So our math did mess up. It's actually, we need to change that line. So it actually picked 3 lines of questions instead of just 2. So let's go modify that and let's fix that. Let's just do less than, and then we also need to do our select statement at the end. Select star from Bible trivia where picked equals 1. All right, so let's run that again. And there we go. There are 4 questions. Cool. Now we can get fancy and do a loop and make another column and call it round. So that way we'll know, oh, this first 4 are for round 1 and round 2 and round 3 for whatever ones you want. So if we come in here and say we want to have 8 rounds and we run it. And actually I should have ran this one line by itself. Let's run it again. So 8 times 4, how many questions should we have? 32. Yep. So it will randomly generate questions and it won't repeat them every time you try and do a game. So I could go way more in depth with that, but I mean, my nerd is starting to get the best of me. Let me know if you have any other questions. This is what I'm using to run everything. And again, this is the background I came from, doing databases and programming and stuff like that. And I still want to stay as proficient as I possibly can with that skill set. And that's what I am using. So link is down below. Let me know if you like this type of stuff. Y'all from the round table, it was said y'all wanted me to put this out. Some people might like it. So that's why I did it, because I make this channel hopefully to give you some different insight for your media ministry. And I have never seen anybody talking about writing a SQL database for Bible trivia. So hopefully y'all enjoyed that. If you like this type of stuff, please let me know and I'll do some more stuff. I try to stay grounded, but if this is some of the stuff y'all like, I will make some more content about that. So if you like this type of content, appreciate a like, consider subscribing, hit that bell. That way you get notified when we come out with other videos to help modernize your media ministry. Thanks for watching, folks. This is AJ. We'll catch you on the next video. Later.